Hey guys, it's Sellet again. Hopefully I got rid of the echo in the background, but I'm back with another video, and I said I would make a hand trap tier list video, but I don't want to make like 3 separate videos talking about the different staples that are good in this format, so I just went ahead and kind of just meshed everything together for you guys. This is going to be talking about hand traps, board breakers, side deck worthy cards in general. And this is going to be like a pretty all-encompassing video of like how I think the format has evolved and where it's really gone. I said that I did like this format, but there are still some problems, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. And there's actually some things that I didn't address even in my ban list video. Like, obviously, we're going to start with hand traps and then work our way down. The first thing I want to talk about is Shifter. This card is like the best hand trap in the game, and only one deck can play it, which is VS K9. So if you can play this card, which you should, it's an auto win against things like Yummy, K9 Crystron, which is my deck of choice for this format. It is so oppressive as a card that if you're not playing this in a Vanquish Soul list, I don't know what you're doing for the most part, because it is just that good. The fact that Shifter is still being talked about in 2025 at 1 should be a testament to how strong this card is and how ban worthy it even is now. The next card, Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is best of the best. You should be playing this in your main deck. Stops Charmies. It's generic against so many things. It can stop things like Obedience School. Ash on Cupsy Yummy, the main deck monster, really good. If you can stop them from getting surprised, Ash is one of the best ways to do that. Ash is just so generically good that I don't think there's ever really a format where she's not played. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. This isn't worth trying. A lot of people had the idea, and even Jesse Cotton talked about this, where Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries calling Arthalion against Draco Tails seemed good on paper until you realize that they can recycle it back with one of their traps. Same with Yummy. It seemed like calling Snatchy was a good idea, but both of the field spells can actually recycle all 3 Snatchies, or at least one of them, back into the extra deck, and it's kind of pointless. Plus, you're wasting side deck slots that could go to other things that are way more high impact than Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. That's my biggest issue with this card. Ghost Mourner, don't play it. It's a bad card. I'll put Valor in the can be good category. There's very few decks that I think can actually utilize Valor to its full potential, Draco Tail being one of them, because they can actually loop this card with Arthalion. So if they use Valor during your turn, they can actually just fuse with 5 mana, send a couple of materials to the graveyard, and then all of a sudden they can recycle back the Valor and then use it again later on in the turn. So I think Valor is still a good card, it's just it has to be used multiple times in the turn. Ghost Ogre, I would side deck this card personally. There is arguments to be made that this card is fantastic. It hits things like the Dice Smasher lock, which, I mean, most people are not playing that now. It hits Vanquish Soul Start. It hits Lupus when it tries to activate its effect during your turn in order to XYZ summon. So you can permanently remove Lupus that way. There's just a lot of different applications for this card, like even being able to hit the Yummy field spells or something like a Snatchy during your turn when they try to Synchro Summon, I think is a really potent option. It's just, I wholly believe that Ghost Bell is better, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But Ogre is definitely a side-worthy card. Now, when we talk about Ghost Bell, card is insane this format. This card was just reaming me every time I came across a matchup at the Gas South Regional, and I underestimated just how good this card is, because it stops Lupus, even if it's just for a turn. It stops certain K9 Crystron combos. It can stop pretty much any Yummy plays during your turn when they try to use a Synchro to bounce back to the extra deck and summon 2 from the graveyard. There's just too many scenarios to list where Ghost Bell comes up, because it even stops the Draco Tail trap cards. Ash or Bell are good options for the Draco Tail matchup, and both of them are main worthy. Dominus Impulse. If your deck can afford to play Dominus Impulse, I would highly recommend that you do. because this card is still insane even nowadays. Being able to stop something like a Joe Cool revealing Sulfador in K9 Crystron, broken, busted, always. Bystials, I would actually just go ahead and not play this format rather, because the problem with the Bystials is they just don't have enough targets, unless you're playing something like VS K9, which even still, you don't really want to banish things out of your graveyard as much as you do your opponent's graveyard. And technically, the Bystials can hit things like the K9 cards, specifically Joe Cool, Lantern, stuff like that. But if I'm being real with you, it's not real. And if you're siding these in K9 VS specifically for like any sort of K9 variant matchup, I feel like you're already behind the curve and there's other things you could play. Like, yeah, I would even say DD Crow is better. And the reason DD Crow is better is because you can actually hit other things besides monsters, and you can hit any monster with this card. So technically this isn't out to Lupus. Fualos definitely would main deck this. There have been a lot of people that have still tried to side deck this card, and it's too high impact for what it does. Even if you go first and you draw this card, just even pitching this in your draw phase, if they try to go like Holly Sue summon from deck, or try to go Azuna into a like Valon's Sky Blaster, you still get a draw. So at worst it's an upstart, at most it does even more than that. Perulia is good, but I would not main deck the card, I would side deck it. Perulia is really good for the matchups where you know that you're going against some kind of like K9 variant, because they summon a lot from the hand, specifically Crystron or the Vanquish Soulless. Lancia, it can be good. I don't think it's really mandatory in the side deck anymore. Malice has tapered off quite a bit since the last time I've talked about it, but the reason I say Lancia can be good is against K9 Crystron, you can use this card and you hinder their plays quite a bit. I won't say it completely stops them in their tracks, because there are people that try to shotgun this card in draw phase. Quick tip, don't do that. The reason I say that is because when we go Sulfador effect to mill 2 names from the deck to the graveyard, typically if you hit us with Lancia in draw phase, we will have ways to play around it. It's not the best, we only get Cluster, but still getting Cluster is better than nothing. So just be aware of that. And we'll get 2 pops with the Cluster instead of just 1, since Ellis will be part of the end board. Droll and Lockbird, it's still a great card. I main deck this because it's a K9 Crystron, so we do like the Durandal lock if we get hit with a Charmy or something like that. But I can't imagine many people get that sort of benefit, even in like K9 Vanquish Soul. This card's a wind, and that conflicts with the different attributes that they run in the deck already. So really this card is just more so for the side deck rather than the main deck, but if you can main deck this card, I would. There's just so many instances where VS has to sort of fix their hand with a lot of searching, and then when you hit them with this, it gets really awkward for them to try and play the game. Nibiru, I'm struggling between still great and can be good. I'm just going to put it in still great because I know this card is performing at really high levels of competitive play, but for my testing and what I'm doing, I'm just not seeing the value of this card, unless I'm in the Yummy matchup, which is probably where it shines the most. Skullmeister, not even worth trying. Imperm, I would main deck this. This is like one of the best cards to play right now, hands down. Even opening Imperm and nothing else against something that has to play some like a K9 variant, where if you hit their Ripper with this, you're golden. Even if they searched Azuna earlier on in the combo, it's not turned on. So that's one of the main reasons why I like Imperm this format. Gamma can be good. So this is kind of like the Gamma Delta package lumped together. It can be good. It's just Gamma itself is at 1. And you're only going to get the most value from this card playing a 40 card list Anything above that, you're going to see very, very small chances of seeing this card in your opening hand. Plus, you're running the driver, which is a brick, and depending on the type of deck that you're running, that's a pretty big brick to run. Phantasme. I would put Phantasme in the can be good category. Phantasme isn't what I would consider a great card. However, it can be used in K9 VS as a way to dig deeper for, either engine, Holisus, hand traps, stuff like that, even Azunas. So I think Phantasme gets the most use out of it when you're playing something like K9 VS, where it's not only a dark attribute, but you also have ways to dig deeper into the deck for more hand traps or engine that can be turned on. Meowls, I'm back and forth on Meowls. I don't even see it played, so it's kind of like not worth trying. I'm gonna put it in not worth trying, but it could easily be low impact. Contact C. Contact C is one of those like crazy cards that nobody prepares against, but it feels like every time I play against somebody, they're prepared for this card and they do run the cross sheep. Contact C is just it's a blowout. And I guess I'll throw Retaliating C in here, even though it's not in this. Oh, actually, it is in this tier list. Okay, so I would put Retaliating C like right next to Contact C. I think they're right there. It can be good. So Retaliating C is good because against the Draco Tail matchup, if they activate something like Rahu or even Ketu Draco Tail, you can activate this in response, since both of them would technically summon a monster, and every single material that they send goes to the graveyard. And this is also good in Yummy because if they lead with Obedience School or they go Hornet Drones, you can activate Retaliating C, and in the first instance, they have to figure out a way to out this card. So they might make Snatchy, make it a Croaky, and then Synchro for 2, pop this with the Croaky, but if you do like 3 Retaliating C, 1 Contact, you can actually search the Contact C, and since they would probably still be under Obedience School, you can just throw this to their board. It's really hilarious when this card comes down, but this combination is probably not played, because it's a lot of setup, and it requires your opponent to kind of play into it. But if they lead with Hornet Drones, and you activate this card, the Hornet Drones gets banished, and then they can't add back with Kagari. So it's kind of a trade-off with this package. But Contact C is definitely like one of those where I'm like, man, if people are prepared for it, it's dog water. But if they're not prepared for it, it's such a game-ending card because this is also not a once per turn. So there might be instances where you can throw this at them, and they'll have to make a Little Knight banish their own Little Knight, and then you just throw another one at them, and they might not have an out, depending on what else they run in their extra deck. It's a decent card all around. I just wouldn't play it, for me personally. I think there's other cards I'd rather play. Dominus Purge, I would say still great. No, it's definitely like best of the best, so if your deck can play it, do it. The only deck that can really do it is Yummy, so that's why I'm like hesitating here. Okay, Called by the Grave. Main deck this card. I don't care what your list is, you have to main deck this card. It's broken. Because being able to banish something like a Phimena, a Lupus, a Mulcharmy, a certain hand trap that you don't want to see, card is insane. And I can't believe there was a point in time where I didn't want to run this card. Lava Golem, don't run it, not worth trying. There's too many decks that need their normal summon and not enough that don't. Same with Sphere Mode. Okay, I guess we're moving on to like Board Breakers and other side deck cards. Full Force Virus, not worth trying. Eradicator Epidemic, not enough spell trap decks that really matter. Deck Devastation Virus, I would say it's not worth trying. There's too many decks. Like, well, I guess this card's really good against Yummy, but unless you're playing something like K9 VS and the fact that they can just like if they open Surprise along a bunch of names, they still get to play. So it's not even really worth trying in that scenario. Mistaken Arrest, this card's not good. Shared Ride, I mean, I guess it's fine, but I wouldn't play it even in K9 VS. This is specifically like Mitsurugi hate, but you just run Droll even in the side for K9 Vanquish Soul, I feel. Let's see, what else we got? Dark Ruler No More is fucking insane. I don't mean to be vulgar, but this card is ridiculous. I'm playtesting with this card again, specifically as a counter to Yummy. It's the only deck that seems to be giving me the most trouble. And even if they set Surprise, just having this as a way to counteract at least 80% of the board is good enough for me. Turning off Herald is a must. Super Poly, I would put it in Still Great. The reason I say that this card is good is it low-key has a lot of different applications that I think people are not aware of. For instance, you can fuse away Lupus and Azuna to make Mud Dragon, and there's a few different like Mud Dragon combinations that can happen, but Mud Dragon is an unofficial like boss monster for some boards, because you could go Mud Dragon Call Dark if you need to protect something like a Joe Cool search, or just like protect Joe Cool from being flipped face down or whatever the case. You can also call Wind so that it can't be targeted by things like Imperm, and then you insulate yourself from Nib even further during your turn. I find Super Poly to be a sleeper pick. There's just not many decks that can abuse it too much at the moment. Forbidden Droplet, I'm going to put it in the can be good category. I think as the format has evolved, I don't really like Droplet as much, especially in K9 Crystron, where we already lose to something like a Herald of Arclight, and I don't want to play Droplet because that card already loses harder into Herald of Arclight because we can't send anything to the graveyard under it. So, there's that. I'm gonna add like another... Actually, no. I'm just gonna put Lightning Storm and Harpy's Feather Duster in the side, or not low impact. The reason I say they're low impact, Lightning Storm, it feels like it can be good at times, but most interaction is the monsters themselves rather than the spell traps. And a lot of the trap cards and spells this format are chainable to this, so it's like you're not trading very favorably. Yummy summons a lot of their things in defense as well, so this card loses a bunch of value. It just loses so much value. Same with, Harpy's Feather Duster, although I would argue this card's even worse than Lightning Storm because it only affects spell traps. I would say Dimensional Barrier is not worth trying. So, D-Barrier calling XYZ sounds good until you realize that outside of those matchups, it's still not as good. Because if you call Synchro against Yummy, they'll just make a Snatchy as part of their end board and then kind of pass. Kind of like what they do when they're under Fualos, but even if you call XYZ against something like K9 VS, they'll just make Rock of the Vanquisher pass and then play during your turn still with like Azuna or whatever the case, so I'm not a big fan of it. The Solemn cards, I would say Solemn Judgment is like one of the best cards this format. A lot of people still sleep on this card. I run at least 2 of it with an Apophis and Silo Hat in the side, simply because being able to stop things like Dark Ruler No More for me is a must. And I'd assume in Yummy that's a must as well, so this is like one of the best ways to do it. Solemn Strike, I would say it's still great, or it can be good. I would lean more towards it can be good because I think Solemn Judgment just has more flexibility in terms of what it can hit. Triple Tactics Thrust, this card's good. There's not too many decks that can like abuse the fact that they search every spell and trap in the game that's a normal spell or trap, outside of like Striker. Maybe you could argue Lunalight. I know Yummy can play this even in the main deck. It's a good card all around, but There's situations where you just want to side deck this card rather than main deck it. Enemy controller, don't even try. Songs of the Dominator can be good if your deck can run it. If it can't, don't. Solemn Warning. God, Solemn Warning. I'm gonna lean towards Solemn Warning is low impact, and I say low impact only because there's only one deck in the well. I guess there's two decks, but Obedience School is not once per turn, so this is definitely more of a low impact card. It sounds like it's targeted hate for Draco Tail more than anything. Different Dimension Ground is busted, but I would put it in the still great. It's basically Shifter on legs, but it's only in conjunction with Thrust that it's played, so it's kind of whatever. Xyz Encore, don't even try it. Cosmic Cyclone, don't even try it. Card's not good. Change of Heart's not good. Fenrir is actually solid. But there's only one deck that can utilize it at the moment, and that's Draco Tail, because this card kind of facilitates all the needs that it has for the deck. So you put a body on board, and then you can search Unicorn. I would say Unicorn is better than Fenrir, but they're kind of in the same like category, because Unicorn still catches a lot of people off guard by just ripping a card out of the extra deck. But I can see why people wouldn't want to play this package. But definitely the 3 Fenrir, 1 Unicorn package is good in something like Draco Tail, because you just get more monsters on the board and in the hand, which plays very nicely into your like end game. Raigeki is pretty solid, I would say. I wouldn't say that this card is main deck worthy, even though we've seen some people go ahead and main deck this in something like a Striker. There was a regional deck list for K9 Crystron that played this at 3, but that was like the most unorthodox K9 Crystron deck list I had seen up until that point, and I think that's more so lightning in a bottle, like that there's no way that can be replicated again. Dark Hole is not worth trying. I've seen some people play Dark Hole. Where Dark Hole is good, Raigeki is just infinitely better. Book of Eclipse, I'll put it in, it can be good. I think the best way to counter the Yummy end board is with Dark Ruler no more. And unfortunately, Book of Eclipse, while it is not once per turn, it can be stopped with things like Ash, and like even other things on board that negate things like this. So if it's not once per turn, why not just run Dark Ruler instead? That's my personal opinion. Evenly Matched. This card is good, but I can't run it in K9 Crystron because people will side deck Lancia against me games 2 and 3. This card is insane. Being able to go post game 1 and just side in 3 of these, it's not once per turn. And if you pair this up with something like Dark Ruler no more, there's virtually no decks that can play past this combination of cards. Dino Wrestler Pankratops. I'm not a huge believer in this card like I once was, but I'll put it in the can be good category. Pankratops is specifically only good in the Yummy matchup, and only the Yummy matchup. Any other matchup, this card is kind of just whatever. You don't really feel... Well, I take that back. This card can still be great. So let's say you're going up against a K9 variant that does run the Force Release package, because a lot of people are starting to go back onto it. So this card, if you summon it and try to go immediately into battle phase, your opponent might try to use Force Release, and then you can just chain Pankratops, and since it still activates on board, resolves on board, you can pop the Ripper. So they're not going to get the value off of those cards. So technically off of one card, you handle 3 disruptions with a like K9 variant. And I think that's good. Against Yummy, excuse me, you deal with a couple of other things. Forbidden Lance, not worth trying. Forbidden Chalice, oddly enough, I think does have a place in the metagame, but it's very, very, very niche situations. I wouldn't even say that this card is super acknowledged, if at all, but I've seen some people try it and see very minimal success with it. It's just a poor man's Imperm and maybe even Valor. But there are times where it's like, huh, even the attack boost comes up. Anti-spell fragrance. With as much spell cards have left the format, I would put it in can be good. So it's a little weird because no, I'm gonna put it in still great because I'm thinking of like Mitsurugi, Malice, like all the other different matchups still, like even rogue matchups, especially Striker. Striker hates when this card gets flipped up. Same with Lunalight. So I think this card is still what I would consider to be great, just side deck worthy. Crossout Designator. I'm leaning into low impact, if not even worth trying. The card's just not really all that impactful. Like, even if you're trying to cross out a Charmy, I would say Triple Tactics Talent is one of those cards where you could easily play it in the main board just fine. But I'm seeing a lot of people side deck it, so I'm going to put Triple Tactics Talent still great. Where Crossout seems busted, Talents is just more practical. Being able to either draw two or steal a monster off the opponent's board, or even look at their hand, rip a card, and play with perfect knowledge. I think Triple Tactics Talent is just more flexible than something like Crossout. Book of Moon. Book of Eclipse is better. I've seen some people play this, but I'm gonna lean towards just low impact. Yeah, low impact's fine. The card's not awful, but it's not ideal. Like, it's so low impact, you may as well play something else. Kurikara. Kurikara is just one of those cards where I'm gonna put it in the can be good category, because technically K9 VS can play this card. It's a fire attribute, which is nice for them, but any other deck, you have to let your opponent basically stop you all the way through, and that can get quite annoying very quickly. And against something like Yummy, they're constantly tagging things off the board and on the board, so they're not sticking around long enough for this card to have maximum value. I would even put this in the not worth trying. Like, this isn't the format for it. Goes in match. Goes in match is... I think Goes in match has a place. Like, it can be good, but there's not very many lists that are so, like, multi-typed. For instance, Yummy can't play this card. K9 VS can play this card, but depending on what attributes are already on board, they kind of lock themselves under it, so I think it's more so not even worth trying. Unless you have a mono-type, like, attribute deck that... Or mono-attribute deck, excuse me, not type, where this card is, you know, busted. Tisabu, this card is, I would consider still great. It is a floodgate that I think should go, but man, oh man, playing Vanquish Soul K9 with this, it's a completely different ball game, I'll tell you that much. Rivalry of Warlords, I would say it can be good. Like, if you're playing something like Malice, this card's insane. But actually, if you're playing Yummy, this is also a good card. You just can't play, I think, the Herald of Arclight once you flip this up. But usually what you can do is you can hold the Herald, or just shotgun it away and then flip this up against a certain matchup or opponent. So I think Rivalry is a pretty damn good card on the side. Salesman. Honestly, is this card even good? Like, I guess if you're playing a going second list that needs to play this card, it can be good. So you can call things like Nib, Droll, so on and so forth, but most people are not playing Nib or Droll in the main, they're playing them in the side. So it's really one of those cards where you have to make a decision pretty much right off the bat if your opponent is playing one of the major 3 decks, or rather Draco Tail slash VSK9. So like calling Phimena or even an Arthalion or whatever, but I don't know. I just don't think the card is as potent as it was from the last format, and that says a lot because Gem Knight was the big deck that could use this, and it's not so good anymore. Spellbound. I've not really seen a whole lot of people try Spellbound, even though I think it might be worth a consideration. I don't know if the restriction on this card prevents them from using them as XYZ, Link, or Fusion material for the rest of the duel, or if it's just for the rest of the turn. If it's for the rest of the turn, this card is infinitely worse than I gave it credit for and should not be considered. However, if it's forever, that might be a different conversation because it might be worth testing, in my opinion. And then finally, to end off the video, we have Black Goat Laughs. Now, this card is pretty much a staple in your side or main deck. Personally, I would put it in the side deck because unless you're running something like Striker, there's no reason to main deck this card. Although I've seen Lunalight lists play this in the main with like 3 Foolish Burial Goods because they already main deck the Foolish Burial Goods. Basically, if you have a deck that can utilize Foolish Burial Goods in your main deck, play Black Goat Laughs. If you don't, play it in your side. Either way, the card is insane, and it is getting a reprint soon. So, with that, this is pretty much all the staples that I wanted to talk about. If there's anything that I missed in this video, go ahead and comment it down below. With that being said, I've got some other things cooking in the background. Hopefully they come out soon. Cheers.